What's up, everybody? This is Robert. Gonna explain a little bit about the political ideology paper to give you an idea of what to expect. On Moodle, there is a assignment sheet. There's also information about it on the syllabus. The paper is worth 10 points out of the 100 total for the class. It's due Monday, January 27th by 11 p.m. You can email it to me. You can submit it to a Moodle Dropbox. You can hand me a hard copy if you want to. If you hand me a hard copy, it's got to be in class on Monday. Otherwise, you need to email it to me. Even if you give me a hard copy, it's good to send me an electronic copy. That way, everybody is sort of safe. So if you say you turned it in and I don't have a record of it, we can go and say, oh, look, there's an electronic copy. You obviously did turn it in. If I hand you back the paper and I didn't record your grade, you can say, no, I did turn this in. See, here it is on Moodle. I turned it in. This is the day and time. So it's good to turn in an electronic copy. If you only turn in an electronic copy, I will email you the paper back with my notes. If you turned in if you turned in a paper copy, want it to be typed, not handwritten, but if you turned in a paper copy, I'll return you the paper copy with handwritten notes. Okay. So the paper's on political ideology, a little bit about political ideology, what I'm looking for. It's not just what your positions are on specific issues. So your political ideology in this case is not just, do you support the Affordable Care Act or do you oppose the Affordable Care Act? Do you support background checks for people who try and buy guns, or do you not support it? Do you support immigration law that would create a guest worker program and amnesty maybe, or do you support stricter immigration laws, sort of bus all the immigrants out of the country or whatever? It's not necessarily that. Those are specific policy positions that are going to be informed by your political ideology. Your political ideology is sort of this overarching set of beliefs that you hold. Your beliefs on what constitutes justice, fairness, what the role of government should be. Not the specific role of government, but a general idea of this is the way a well-ordered society should be run. Here's one way to get at that, to get an idea of what your sort of background political ideology is. Think about a specific issue that you support and think about all the reasons that you support it. Go through and strip away those reasons that would not cause you to change your mind on that issue. For this, I'm going to talk about the case of abortion. So you often see individuals that are pro-life say that they support abortion, or they're pro-life, they oppose abortion because it's killing a unborn child. Their religion opposes it. It increases the risk of breast cancer. Women later come to regret it. It's not as safe as delivering a baby. It leads to the breakdown of society. Those would be some general reasons why people would oppose abortion. Now here's the truth about abortion. It does not increase, this is just a verifiable fact, it does not increase a woman's chance of cancer of any kind. Abortions are much safer than pregnancy. Abortions do not lead to a woman having mental health problems in the future at all. As a matter of fact, most women after having an abortion report 95% report feeling their primary feeling after is relief and sort of happiness and glad the situation is over. All those reasons that people would give as to why they oppose abortion, about protecting women are false. They're verifiably false. They're unscientific. There isn't any academic research to support their position outside of a few organizations that have specifically organized themselves around a religious ideology to put out information that tries to muddy the waters of people finding out what the truth is in this issue. So we've stripped away those beliefs. If you support, if you're pro-life and you do not support abortion and you put those reasons forward as a reason why you do not support abortion, you need to disregard those reasons because they are simply not true. But what we still have left is it's killing an unborn child, life begins at conception, life is sacred, things like that. Those are things that may be harder to assail if someone was trying to argue to get you to become pro-choice. And those are things that you may say, listen, even if all this other stuff is actually wrong about it decreasing women's mental health outcomes in the future, about it harming women, about it causing cancer, even if all that is false, the fact still remains you're killing an unborn child. If that's where you're at, then that is the reason why you oppose abortion. Now think about what that means for you. What does that tell you about your political ideology? You have all these different reasons why you'll bring into why you oppose abortion, but a lot of them are extraneous to the real reason why you oppose abortion, which is the unborn child situation, for a number of pro-life people at least. So in thinking about some of your stances, political stances in that regards, it can help you figure out what your political ideology is. In this abortion example, it can reveal that a person's political ideology has perhaps a strong religious basis to it. It has a strong basis to it of human life is created at conception. That's just an assumption that person brings with them. Assumptions that you bring with you are certainly part of your political ideology as they inform your practical political positions. So this person that is pro-life, once they disregard these other things that are just factually inaccurate, and you get into the realm of value judgments, assumptions, opinions, what you take to be true that can't necessarily be objectively determined to be right or wrong, those are the basis of where your political ideology comes from, or can be, and where you can find where your political ideology is. So this person who supports banning abortions or who's pro-life, you may say they have a religiously motivated political ideology. Some of the other things I said earlier, they are pro the sanctity of human life. They may view, since they come at it with the assumption that once conception happens, or once the embryos implanted into the uterus. That is then a life that needs to be protected. That there's this idea that society, part of their political ideology is that society needs to reach out and protect the most vulnerable of our citizens. And certainly, if you believe that life begins at life does begin at conception, there's no doubt about that, but that the embryo and fetus are humans that have personhood rights, that you would extend rights to them to not be aborted. That's would inform your political ideology about how, where you draw the lines as to who gets rights and who doesn't get rights. And that's a little bit of what we're getting at. If you support unions, unions, you can look at what they do. They're organizations of workers. Workers pay dues to the unions. The unions then represent all the workers together as one body to negotiate with management, who's also one body in this case, for things like higher wages, better health benefits, things like that. The fact is that union jobs pay way more money than non-union jobs. Union workers have far more fringe benefits, sick leave, vacation leave, health insurance, things like that. They have a lot more worker protection. They have a better worker grievance policy than non-union workers. Let's say that you support workers' right to unionize, okay? And you cite these reasons. They have better pay. They have better working conditions. They have better benefits. They have a more equal playing field in negotiating with management. For labor and working conditions and such, they get a voice in their working conditions. Things like that. Now let's strip away some of those things, though. If it was shown that union workers don't make more money than non-union workers, let's say they make the same, or maybe union workers even make less than non-union workers, would you still support unions? Would you still support people's right to organize? If your answer is yes, then we need to dig a little deeper to see what the sort of fundamental political ideology is that's backing this support for unions. What if it's shown that union workers don't get better benefits, don't get better health benefits? Do you still support the unions? Then if you do, then that's kind of an extraneous detail. Certainly can help support your position to other people that might be swayed by that. But you can't say that's the primary reason why you support a worker's right to organize if you turn out to be wrong on that fact, but you still hold to the position. So we're moving through here, stripping away some of these lines of evidence or reasons why people would give as to why they support unions. And finally we get to the point of the only thing we're left with, perhaps, is that workers have the right to self-determination to see if they want to organize. If that's what you believe, if that's the fundamental belief that underpins everything else, then that would be part of your political ideology. The idea that everybody in society has some sort of, or at least that workers in society have some sort of right to organize democratically, and that the masses of people that work in factories or in corporate offices and fast food restaurants and things like that, your political ideology would be that those people have some right to control their own working conditions. If, however, you don't support union rights, you could turn around and say, listen, all these other things are true. They get better wages, they get better benefits, they get better working conditions, things like that. I just do not support union rights. Why not? Traditional explanation for this would be a sort of economic freedom or liberty argument that the person that owns the shop should be the ones that are allowed to set the wages, conditions in the shop, things like that, because they're the one that actually owns the property. And the people that don't support unions, in this sort of generalized fictional case, could view the unions as infringing upon the rights of the owners, whereas people that support unions could see those that oppose union rights as infringing upon the rights of the workers. And that would be the more baseline political ideology. And that tells you something about what you actually believe, about what your value judgments are, what your assumptions are about the way the world works, about about how humans interact, about what is right and what is wrong, that create from there these more practical policy positions of a pro-life or a pro-choice position, or a pro-union or pro-management freedom position. So that's how that goes. Another thing to think about when writing this paper is words have meanings, and the meanings aren't necessarily always obvious to everybody. For example, as I put on the assignment sheet, freedom is one thing that I believe most Americans will say they support, and that's part of their value system, is freedom. America is the home of the free. Well, freedom is a very nebulous term. It doesn't really actually mean much in a political sense, except for the person who's saying it. If you were to tell me that you like America because America has freedom, I would not exactly know what you were talking about. I would wonder, what do you mean by freedom, and what kind of freedom does America have? America certainly has lots of freedoms, but America has some freedoms that other countries... America doesn't have freedoms that other countries do. In some of the Baltic states, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, you could say that the people in those countries have freedom to have health care. Americans right now, despite the Affordable Care Act, don't necessarily have the same level of freedom to enjoy health care as people in those countries do, because while ours right now is the closest universal coverage we've had, it's still not universal. There's lots of gaps and such. People in those states have strong unions. America does not have a strong union movement. Americans don't really have the freedom to unionize in the same way that people in other countries have the freedom to unionize. Americans don't have the freedom to smoke pot the way people in other countries have the freedom to smoke pot, as an example. So what do you value there? Now, Americans do have freedoms with money that other countries don't have, and that's where a lot of our freedoms, American freedoms at least, are based on, is economic freedom. The idea and economic freedom for the individual, not for the collective. So the idea is that I, as an individual, have the freedom to negotiate a wage independently with an owner of a business, or I have the economic freedom as an individual to open up my own business and do what I wish with my money. Some of the other countries in the world are more focused on political freedoms, making sure everybody has the freedom and the right to vote, that people, middle to lower class people, have freedom and rights to, like economic security, leads to political freedom. So the freedom to have a house and the right to have a house and food and things like that. So if you told me, and if you write in your paper that you just like freedom, that's an example of I'm not going to know what you're talking about. You should specify what you mean. Same thing goes with other words like liberty, justice, fairness, equality. If you're an anti-authoritarian, what does that mean? What does it mean to be an anti-authoritarian? We're going to look at a little bit of this on the political compass to help try and get your mind going on this. But you could be an anti-authoritarian when it comes to some social issues, but very authoritarian when it comes to other social issues. So you could say, listen, I am super pro-gay marriage. I am not authoritarian on people's sex life, basically, or who they love, things like that. However, I am very authoritarian on whether or not people go to church. I think everybody should go to church. Those would be two social issues where you could be authoritarian or not authoritarian. So you need to sort of define what these words mean. A sort of general outline for this: you'd have an introduction, you'd have a couple paragraphs in the body, sort of in some way talking about what your political ideology is in this sort of broad sense, and then give a few examples of how it may or it does affect specific political positions that you may hold. Sort of think through that. If you could do it either way. You could say, I support a woman's right to have an abortion. When it ultimately comes down to it, these are some reasons I may give, but when it ultimately comes down to it for me personally, this is what it means to me as to why I support a woman's right to an abortion. And this is what that says about my political ideology, my sort of background assumptions, the way I view another word we'll talk about in the first week, the social contract that we should exist in and that we're creating. You could do it the other way around also. I believe my political ideology, my assumptions I bring with me to the world, the model that I view the world with, the social contract, says this. Therefore, that leads me to have this belief that women should have a right to an abortion. So you should have some of that in the middle. So introduction, some of that stuff in the middle. And at the end, I kind of want you to bring some of that home. The conclusion is supposed to drive your reader a little more wrap up what you've written and then drive the reader forward a little bit. Make some sort of, strong closing statement. It would be nice if you could include in there some explanation or some discussion about the political compass. We're going to take this test, and I'll show you in class about it. Where you ended up on the political compass on this scale that, again, I'll show you, and how you feel like that related to where you generally perceive yourself as being, what you thought of the questions that were in the political compass, things like that. So I hope that helps explain this. It is going to be a minimum of 2 pages. It's your first paper. Minimum of 2 pages. That's also a minimum of 700 words. 2 pages is roughly what you're looking at, but definitely make sure it's a minimum of 700 words. Look at the formatting guidelines as to how I want it formatted. That's very important. I don't necessarily know if you put 701 words, I'd be surprised if you could get it done well in 701 words. You may be looking at more of a 3-ish page paper to talk about some of this stuff in detail, especially when it comes to once you start kind of defining and trying to get at what your own personal ideology is. Take me on that journey. Other things that you could mention also, I should say, are personal experiences. What are some experiences that you've had that have led you to create assumptions, that have led you to create this political ideology that then lead you to have certain political beliefs? One last thing to throw out there. So 2 pages minimum, 700 words. You'll probably be looking at 3 pages, but you could maybe get it done in 2 pages. It's due Monday, January 27th at 11 p.m. It's the first paper, I believe, that you need to turn in. And like I said, we'll talk more about it in the first and second week. I'll have the assignment sheet up on Moodle. You'll have this video that you can watch to get hopefully a more in-depth idea of what political ideology is and how we're using it in this class. It's going to be a good review, I think, for the lecture also, because I'll be saying some of the same stuff in the lecture, and some of the stuff will be on the test and all that good stuff. One other thing about this is we have citations. You're in college, you need to cite your sources. I don't require any citations on this specific paper, though, because this stuff should be coming out of your own head. I don't really care about citations for this particular paper. A lot of it's going to be what your personal opinion is and such. I hope that helps. I have a lot of clothes back here. In case y'all were wondering what's going on with all those clothes, I'm sorting through my t-shirts and winter clothes and such, and seeing what I have available, and if I need to throw some stuff out, which I think I probably will, and if I need to buy an extra long sleeve shirt or something like that. I'm sure y'all were very fascinated about that piece of information. Alrighty, have a good whatever time of day it is that you're watching this, and I hope this helps.